So I will share with you a little narrative of my Adriatic avant-garde project. So from the moment I first started thinking about this talk until today, the focus has shifted a little. So not so much in terms of the overall content, but in terms of emphasis. I would still like to stay close, of course, to the topic of the symposium, so ecology and performing arts. And I will do this through a slightly different lens. I will do this through water and through more hybrid art forms, and through what I call the hydro-ecological or hydro-poetic avant-garde. So first question, why avant-garde? I have been working with this signifier now for more than 10 years. So whether that is something that we know as historical avant-garde, so these isms from nonsense and pacifist Dadaism to futurism and constructivism, so where we have this idea where art, life and technology first started to merge, where art declaratively first through manifestos and viral magazines, and samizdats wanted to create alliances that were not based on these capitalist relationships, and basically art that wanted to shape future. Also with performances and happenings, in the 60s especially, being in a way rehearsal. So for example, what does it mean to have a nomadic subjectivity? What does it mean to decenter the Western-centric notion of what is life and what is art? But also my focus is on today's practices, something that we know as art science or intermedia art or other contemporary neo-avant-gardes. Avant-garde today, as a word, can sound outdated. It can even sound a bit suspicious, maybe. It carries always with it this connotation of revolution, of radical experimentation, sometimes even of failure, because of all failures of 20th century. And this is something, as Mark James Leger observes, so this absence of the term avant-garde is in a way symptomatic of our post-political times, he says. Because the avant-garde inevitably brings this connotation of a social revolution. It invokes, even through playful, through Dadaist means, this uniting on the basis of fighting against the capitalist and extractivist practices, so against colonialisms and imperialisms. So avant-garde experimental openness, its processual character, this is what makes it relevant for imagining alternative ways of living and being, and this demands a complete de-automation and defamiliarization of everything we know, how we perceive, how we think, how we act, and so on. So this is the reason why avant-garde, and in the context of the ecological crisis, I believe this proposition is urgently relevant. And now, to move further, I want to narrow my topic to this concept of the Adriatic avant-garde. This is also the acronym of my project, Eco-Transversal Remapping of Northern Adriatic Avant-Gardes. I've just started this project this year. I will be implementing it in the period of 3 years at the Research Center of the Slovenian Academy of Sciences and Arts, in collaboration also with the University of Graz. And the project is very interdisciplinary. It will combine, on the one hand, archival research, digital mapping and cartography, or maybe better kind of counter-cartography of artistic practices, also the cultural history of this bioregion, so the Northern Adriatic region, and approaches from eco-criticism, ecofeminism, and environmental humanities. Kind of the main goal of the project is to first highlight the transnational Northern Adriatic avant-garde, and to do this transversally, so from 20th to 21st century, and second, to reframe artistic and cultural narratives in the face of today's ecological crisis by developing something that I would call an eco-aesthetic framework that connects art, environment, in my case this would be the body of water, the Adriatic Sea, and society. And the question, why water? So kind of when I wanted to reframe my research, the idea was to move away from hegemonic discourses. So also the labels like Eastern Slavic, Socialist, Post-Socialist, even Yugoslav, that keep reinforcing historically relevant, but also limiting narratives. And recent wars, recent old geopolitical shifts have only made these narratives more powerful. So instead, this turn to the body of water, the turn to the Adriatic Sea. The Adriatic connects this part of Europe I'm interested in, also where I live, so Italy, Slovenia, and Croatia, and kind of offers a very focused, a very distinct context for historical neo-avant-garde and contemporary neo-avant-garde. For example, one of the first internationally recognized eco-art or minimal land art movements, such as the neo-avant-garde Oho Collective, is from this region. It gives us also a transnational, transcultural, eco-critical lens. It lets us rethink the region's avant-garde art in a way that makes debates about centers and peripheries almost irrelevant. Because, as you probably know, avant-gardes from East Central Europe, especially in the Balkans, has often been described as marginal, as minor, as peripheral. This was also the topic of last year's Center and Periphery, the topic of last year's Amfiteater Symposium, also something that I presented. My work kind of confronts this by turning to the archives and reconstructing not a straight line of history but a chronotope, and this was the focus of this book that was mentioned, so Yugoslav avant-garde and Metropolitan Dada. It will be translated also to English, hopefully in 2027. In this book I dealt with these kind of hierarchies in art history and also with the contemporary relevance of avant-garde art strategies. So the same holds for the Adriatic avant-garde project. I want us kind of to think about the rhizome that was already mentioned of 20th and 21st century practices through the lens of the Adriatic Sea. And I have two reasons for this: war and water. So first, war. As Victor Pelevin said, we always live either in post-war or pre-war times. And right now it's not clear which one we are in. I sometimes even wonder, could this fragile state between wars even be considered a kind of luxury? And working in my field, this thought transforms into question: how can we study art history without falling back on national frameworks, military histories, kitsch labels, or rigid geopolitical categories? These are all one and the same things, contributing to the moral hypnosis and normative kind of psychoideology that creates conditions for the development of fascist politics. One of the answers for me is this shift to the Adriatic. The sea itself, the bioregion, becomes the framework. It connects different national states, and in doing so, it gives us a different way to see the avant-garde. And second is the water. The Northern Adriatic is one of the most impacted and vulnerable areas of the Mediterranean. Intense human activity has made it especially fragile, and this fragility of the sea, the coastline, the rivers, the lakes, has sparked a wave of new projects, as you probably all know, artistic also projects, scientific, cultural, all turning their attention to the unknown and unknowable sea, and more broadly, water. But here is the crucial point. When we take water seriously as an element, not only as a subject matter, but as a method and epistemology, something fundamentally shifts. As the editors of Thinking with Water put it, water's materiality automatically redirects us toward multiplicity, towards multiple others. To engage with water is to engage with fluidity, with transformation, with permeability. It means staying open to shifting boundaries, and this could be between humans and environment, landscapes, but also between disciplines, artistic forms, and histories. When I speak about the design of this project, I also draw on two concepts that are very important for me: transversality and the chronotope. In geometry, so first the transversality. In geometry, a transversal is the line that cuts across two parallel lines. And Felix Guattari borrowed the idea to describe what happens when we break hierarchies, disrupt fixed logics, and experiment with new relations. So transversality, in this sense, connects different historical processes, ones that may not share the same origin, they may not even share the same center, but still they kind of touch, they intersect, and generate new subjectivities and new alliances. Alongside this, I use Mikhail Bakhtin's notion of the chronotope, so literally space-time. It helps us think of cultural processes not just as linear, not just as crossing borders, but also as happening in simultaneity. So chronotopes allows us to imagine multiple versions of modernity and contemporaneity existing at the same time rather than kind of competing. So from here, I kind of want to expand a bit the theoretical framework. I draw on ecofeminism and post-humanism, Donna Haraway's notion of entanglement and therapolis, where beings are always becoming with others. Of course, Rosie Braidotti's call for transversal convergence, mapping heterogeneous entanglements across organic, technological, and ecological layers. These ideas move us beyond this kind of human-centered perspectives and toward relational forms of knowing. Equally central are the spatial and material turns. The spatial turn focuses attention on place, here the Northern Adriatic as a bioregion. The material turn from thinkers like Jane Bennett with her vibrant matter reminds us that non-human forces, and in this case water itself, actively shape our perception, our memory, and cultural production. So it becomes very useful for me to think about different theories and notions of kind of expanded epistemologies, the way we produce knowledge, so embodied, feminist, hydroepistemologies. For example, Astida Leimanis reminds us that we are all bodies of water, porous, relational, shaped through flows and dependencies. Then Bronwyn Bailey Charteris speaks of the hydrocene, a conceptual tool and curatorial practice that decenters the Anthropocene and foregrounds water's agency. You're also probably familiar with the Slovenian artist Robertina Šebjanić and her Aquatocene that similarly positions aquatic environments as active co-creators of meaning. And last but not least, Karin Ingersoll's seascape epistemology, grounded more in indigenous knowledge, emphasizes this relational navigation in and of the sea over some abstract mapping. Moreover, the hydropoetics from my title is also something I would like to emphasize in environmental humanities, particularly in river studies. John Charles Ryan proposed hydropoetics as an approach or a perspective on water grounded in poiesis. So meaning, as we know, bringing forth or creating, making something new. He defines this through embodiment, through relationality, and multi-scalarity. Ryan argues that hydropoetics unsettles terracentrism, our deep bias for the solid ground, for terra firma, by putting focus on the hydrocentric ways of knowing. And this is something I think where my talk also connects with the previous speaker. Now, my focus is not on rivers, it's on the Adriatic Sea, but nevertheless, this definition is generative. Hydropoetics urges us to imagine watery modes of sensing and relation that cannot be reduced to fixed ground. And if we go further, and if we translate this into art history, hydropoetics becomes both a metaphor and method. It helps us read avant-garde archives not as these solid, closed monuments, but as transformative currents, the sediments, which are always partially resurfacing, almost in waves. In this way, we also accept incompleteness and relationality as conditions of knowledge. And here, hydropoetics meets what we might call situated aesthetics, an approach that ties aesthetic experience to the ecological, historical, and epistemic conditions in which this particular art example or art case arises. And what this does, it resists this view from nowhere and insists on partial, on embodied, and embedded perspectives. So kind of with this hydropoetics and situated aesthetics perspective, this gives me a way to frame the Adriatic avant-garde not as a canon, but as a cartography in which, as we know, the map is never the territory. So what does it mean in practice? Quickly, I want to create the ecocentric cartography of the Adriatic avant-garde, kind of layered, transversal, rhizomatic mapping that integrates spatial, material, and ecological dimensions. And as I said, this is not about creating a canon or even kind of an anti-canon or a mini-canon. It's about overcoming or decentralizing the question of the canon altogether by kind of visualizing art as situated within ecological and historical entanglements. Methodologically, I will kind of work across these three historical periods. Each is marked by crisis. So the interwar avant-garde, shaped by post-war horror, devastations, industrialization, the post-Second World War neo-avant-garde, shaped by raising ecological awareness during the Great Acceleration, and also the contemporary practices which are shaped by increasing global ecological and social crisis, but also increasing information and effects of these occurrences. Within these periods, I'll be exploring the practices through three overlapping clusters, the mythological or poetic one, Adriatic mythopoetics, the more than human engagement, the ones that are explore porous boundaries between humans, non-humans, and environments, and the third, the resistance to extractivism, works that critically address pollution, biodiversity loss, and the exploitation of maritime life. So just a few illustrative images. I will move quickly from history to the contemporary examples. The Slovenian avant-gardes that I keep returning to, first Rečko Kosovel with his constructivist energies and eco-poetic sensitivity. So think of the tension he stages between industrial modernity, mechanization and electricity, and the nature of the Kars region. In his time, the Kars looked harsher, more empty. It was more like a burnt landscape we witnessed there from the forest fires a couple of years ago. August Černigoj, his numerous works are situated on the Adriatic coast, but also later maritime commissions for transatlantic ships. Around this node, also Tulio Kralj, Janko Polić-Kamo's work, and the Rijeka node. Second cluster, I would mention Oho Collective, their playful, thing-attentive, rage gestures, where objects and environments are not passive, but co-composed relations, which present an early post-human and ecological aesthetic that worked with nature and elements, also such as water. Also, I'd like to mention Emanuela Marasi's work. She is a student of August Černigoj in her installation Mare Strabico, with these shell-like eyes and the aquatic sound field, where the sea returns the gaze to the viewer. So here, visuality and the poetical language aspect kind of shift to the body. They become relational, they become situated, sensorial. So we don't see a representation of nature, but more kind of encounter with these more than human agencies. The third, I would mention Toni Meštrović, video sound installations like Continuum. We have here immersive registers of maritime life and how tourism and modernization disrupt its rhythms. Neja Tomšić, a research performance, Jadranu resort with Vujošević and Langford, a speculative coastline under neoliberal pressure, but also her work Opium Clippers, which is, in which she's tracing colonial maritime economies, addiction routes, and ceramics as this slow medium of memory. And already mentioned Robertina Šebjanić, her work Aquatocene, these subaquatic recordings that make noise pollution audible, and her more recent work Echoes of the Abyss, with toxic afterlives of war through leaking munitions, which for now resulted in this kind of mixing scientific research and speculative installation. So kind of these practices resist extractivist optics. They replace this kind of panoramic sea view with listening and care as a method. So instead of kind of concluding or offering you a conclusion of the project that just started, I would like to invite you. First, of course, to share with me examples that you have. This could be either artists, art cases, archives, or different comparative examples of the wider region that can build, of course, a broader framework. Also, I want to warmly invite you to the project kickoff in Kunsthaus, so Friendly Alien in Austria, in Graz. On November 7th, we will open an exhibition, but then on 8th, we'll have presentations, and I can already confirm there will be guided tours of the exhibition Unseen Futures to Come, and Emilia Škarnulites' solo exhibition Waters Call Me Home. Also a lecture performance by Andreas Philippopoulos Michalopoulos, Hydrojustice. This book was published this year, and in it the author understands justice itself through water's relationality and horizontality. So this connection between law, also power, justice, and water is very important to me. Because how I see the bluing or greening of our work It's not about kind of sustainability that could be maybe presented from European Commission agendas, but more that is more about just world. So making life, also our planet, and beyond more livable. So justice then is not only this human affair that is managed through courts, through politics, economics. It's also something that is very planetary and something that is also inseparable from this watery materiality that both kind of makes us but also always exceeds us.